Hi, I'm Ralph DeAmicis, one of the astrologers from the Planetary Calendar, and this is one of our portraits. This one is Natalie Wood, and there was a wonderful movie about her recently on TV that we caught, and I had done, though, a portrait of her for our book Planetary Calendar Astrology, going beyond observation to action, our companion book. A year or so ago, looking at her chart, it made a wonderful example for what we call understanding the dignities. The dignities have to do with how planets are connected to other planets. What's the relationship? How does the community fit together? And every body, every single planet or sun or moon or planet has six dignities, which is half the sign. So it's like people. We're connected in a lot of different ways. Most people, the connection they know the most is what's called the ruler. Like, for instance, if you're born in Gemini, your ruler is Mercury. If you're born in Sagittarius, your ruler is Jupiter. Now, it's interesting. Those two signs are opposite each other, and it's the smallest and the biggest of the planets. Actually, Pluto's a little smaller, but Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune don't really fit into the dignities. It goes to what you can see visually. You can't see those planets without a telescope. They don't really fit into that traditional, here in the physical life of what we see and touch. Natalie Wood is really interesting because in terms of these connections, practically everything in her chart is connected in some way or another. And the difference is that the rulers, as they're called, are the external or extrovert expressions of these planets. The detriments are the internals, the introvert side of these planets. There's two other positions. There's what's called the exalted position, which is related to the rulers, and the fall position, which are related to the detriments. And these are like the best friends. These are the signs or connections to the planets that are their best friends, the ones that they confide in, and they're colleagues. They're colleagues and confidants. That's how I describe them. For the external, I call them the colleagues. For the internal, I call them the confidants. Natalie is really, really interesting that way. Born in San Francisco, she was a Cancerian, a late Cancer, and she had Mars very close to her Sun, within 1 degree. The Sun's at 27 degrees Cancer. Mars is within 1 degree, 28 degrees Cancer. Interestingly, Pluto was at 29 degrees. And what's interesting, she was born in 1938, within a couple of years from when Pluto was discovered. And Pluto conjunct the Sun or conjunct a major planet, or very much conjunct Mars, gives a person tremendous drive. It takes that Mars energy and supercharges it, and also can make it very sexy, very sensual. It loves to dive into things, and it gives you a kind of a global sense in some ways. Having Pluto high in the chart, high in the sky, is something that's found in politicians. It's the desire to have power over a wide range. Now, the Sun in Cancer generally is not considered a dignity, but if we use our particular dignity charts, or we call our chart of personalities, Cancer is actually the secondary ruler of the Sun. The Sun has the main ruler, Leo, and the secondary ruler, Cancer, and then its exalted position is Aries. See, the planets all get 6, but typically they only, in modern times, have only given the Sun and the Moon 4, a ruler, an exalted, a detriment, and a fall. That seems unfair. So we looked back into it, and in the literature found that there's support for this. And people who know Sun in Cancer, it's a very strong position. There's a lot of very successful people who have the Sun in Cancer. Julius Caesar, for instance, had his Sun in Cancer. George Bush II had his Sun in Cancer. There's a lot of successful business people in prominent positions with the Sun in Cancer. It's a very strong position. Having Mars conjunct there is interesting because it really gave Natalie a fantastically strong presence. Her physical energy was right there. Having Pluto there really supercharged it. But the Mars in Cancer is the fall position of Mars. Mars' exaltation position is Capricorn, so the opposite sign is the fall, Cancer. it's a position that shows tremendous vulnerability, a great willingness to be the confidant. And as a result, it gave her a physical presence that seemed very vulnerable while being very strong. What a bit of a contradiction in terms there, but having a person who's very strong and yet very open and vulnerable at the same time is tremendously appealing, because it means you can rely on them, you can kind of immerse yourself in them, and they will not fail, they will not collapse. And that was part of her appeal. That was part of her, her that zing energy that made her so special. Now, she had Venus in Virgo, which is also the fall position. Venus in Virgo is a position that very much is adaptable to the person you love. And it's in the 12th house, so it means it was, above the horizon. It was rising in the east when she was born. And it was in the 12th house, so about imagination. And you find a lot of actors, especially movie actors, who have Venus in Virgo. And I think it's because of the fact that it's an artistic position, but it's very malleable. The Virgo is one of the mutable signs, they call it. It's very malleable. So kind of, when they're working with a director, the director tells them what they want them to become. The writer tells them what they want them to become. And they say, okay. And they can become that. They can mold themselves. They kind of abandon their own sense of self to be that, because it's how they love. And once again, that's the confidant position. There is a certain vulnerability and strength that's found in the Venus in Virgo. So I thought that was interesting. Now, the other big feminine planet in a chart is the moon. Now, Natalie Wood is obviously very feminine. What's the moon position? The moon is in Taurus. That's the exalted position. It's the opposite, the fall. Now, this is the colleague once again, but for the moon. And it's the position of, you have the mother who's industrious and hardworking. That's the quintessential moon position or Cancerian position. Her best friend her sister is the woman who dresses beautifully and comes over and brings food over and loans her clothes. And it's that Taurian love of luxury and beauty. Remember, Taurus is ruled by Venus. Now, this is interesting because the moon and the Venus are trine each other. So she was very comfortable managing her feminine side. Very comfortable managing her feminine side. And away from the 8th house to the 12th house. The 8th house is a very sexy house again. And she also had Uranus in that house, but not that close to it in Taurus. She would actually be having her Uranus opposition right now because Uranus is once again in Taurus, so she would be approaching, 80 years old. But, of course, she passed away quite young. But once again, that moon in Taurus, it gives a tremendous enjoyment of life, an enjoyment of the texture and flavors of life. It's a very sensual position in terms of what do I enjoy. A lovely position for a woman. Saturn's in Aries. What's Saturn in Aries? Saturn in Aries in the 7th house, he would tend to marry young to an older man, which she did, who was kind of headstrong. Her second husband was up in the 9th house, is Gemini. The first spouse is the 7th house. The second spouse is the 9th house. The 9th house is Gemini. Of course, her second husband seems eternally young, and that goes back to the Mercury in Leo. But the first one was the older man who was kind of headstrong. And Saturn in Aries is what? The fall position for Saturn. So once again, it's this tremendous confidant vulnerability combined with strength. It's amazing how this person just seemed so open to other people in ways in which she internalized it. That was very non-traditional. See, that moon in Taurus and that sun in Cancer, strong positions above the horizon during the daytime, strong positions. But this Venus, this Saturn, these fall positions, these Mars, these are the outliers a little bit. And we all have our issues. We all have our places where we're weak, where we feel less strong, are the areas that make us uncomfortable. And when we look at an actor, when they can express that, outlier feeling, it appeals to us. It makes us, it relates to our sense of humanity. Now, finally, the other planet that's, of course, always important in a chart is Jupiter. Her Jupiter was in Pisces, one of the traditional rulerships. It was in the 6th house, the house of basic skills, in Pisces, the house of imagination. What a perfect position for an actress. What a perfect position, the ability to expand your sense of imagination through your basic skill set. And she started on the stage very, very young. Remember, she was in The Miracle of 34th Street as a young child. She developed these great basic skills that, once again, worked it was 0 degrees Pisces, an exact sextile to her moon in the 8th house, her ability to manage her career effectively. She was very good at managing her life. She was very good at managing her resources. And this combination of planets that were very strong and planets that were very vulnerable is something that made her so appealing. So that's just a little look at Natalie Wood, an icon in Hollywood, her astrology. So this is Ralph from planetarycalendar.com. To see full episodes and more of the portraits, and of course, our forecasts come out every Friday. Visit planetarycalendar.com. Thanks a lot and be well.